The 4th of July holiday weekend is always an eventful time of the year, not just because everyone's outside grilling up some good food and having a good time, but also because it happens to always come at the time of year when the NBA offseason heats up, with free agency and trade season getting underway. That excitement has more than lived up to the hype already over the last few days, and it feels like there's even more big news on the horizon. But for today's video, we'll be checking in on how things have gone across the league. Specifically, in this video, we'll be picking the 3 biggest winners and the 3 biggest losers of the free agency period to this point. And while there are a ton of teams that have both done well and that have made some questionable decisions, these are the ones that stood out to me the most. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. We'll start with the 3 winners of the period thus far, and the first one up is the Boston Celtics. The Celtics finished as last season's runner-ups, losing to the Warriors in the NBA Finals, and they've made it clear that they're not satisfied with that at all, as they've made a few huge moves to bolster their roster even further already. It started when Danilo Gallinari was traded away from the Hawks and then bought out of his contract, which allowed the Celtics to scoop him up. Gallinari is getting up there in age, but being able to have his shot making and creation off of the bench to spark their offense is a huge boost in an area of need for them. Then they went out and traded for Malcolm Brogdon, and they didn't even have to give up any of their core rotational pieces to acquire him, which is a huge win. Brogdon has struggled to stay healthy over the last few years, but when he's on the court, he's shown that he can be a guy who scores an efficient 20 points per game, and he also instantly becomes the team's best passer on the roster. The Celtics came into this offseason in need of playmaking help and depth that spaces the floor, and there honestly weren't many better options available to address those needs than Brogdon and Gallinari, so they are definitely winners so far. The next team in the winners column from the free agency period so far is the Philadelphia 76ers. Unfortunate injuries to Joel Embiid held them back from making the playoff run that they wanted last season, but this summer they had a few looming issues that they needed to address. For starters, James Harden was due for a new contract, and most people assumed that he was about to demand a full Supermax contract extension with the team after they traded for him, which, after the way that he performed this past season, would have been a disastrous contract moving forward. Instead, Harden both opted out of his player option for $47 million for next season, and he's reportedly agreed to take a significant pay cut in order to help the team fill out the roster with more capable depth. This move then freed up the opportunity for the team to sign PJ Tucker, who has been a valuable hustle guy who plays his heart out every postseason for some of the best teams over the last few years, including when he won a ring with the Bucks, and so far, the team has also been able to sign Daniel House, who gave the Jazz some good minutes off the bench last season as a 3-and-D guy. Harden not forcing the team to give him a killer contract allows them to be much more flexible, and that is definitely a big win for them. And finally, the third winner of the period so far we'll be discussing is the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers did their best to salvage the season last year, but without Kawhi Leonard and without Paul George for half the season, they came up just short of a playoff spot. Going into next year, however, they were on track to get right back into contention with Leonard and George coming back fully healthy, but they still needed to address their lack of playmaking from the point guard position. As it just so happened, John Wall finally sorted his situation out with the Rockets, where the two sides agreed to a contract buyout. He hit the free agency market, and the Clippers scooped him up right away, and I absolutely love the pairing there. I don't blame people for forgetting how good John Wall can be, because it's been over a year since we've seen him play on an NBA court, and the last time he was out there for the Rockets, they were losing almost every game they played. But while Wall is no longer suited to be a team's go-to guy, he is still a tremendous passer and playmaker, and with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard being the focal points of the team, Wall can step in and make life easier for them as a true point guard. Now moving over to the losers of the period, the first one up is the Brooklyn Nets. This was probably a pick that all of you saw coming, as their inclusion was definitely obvious. When Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant teamed up in Brooklyn, the expectation was championship or bust. When James Harden then joined them, that notion only got emphasized even further. Well, the warning signs were there all last season when James Harden sought a trade out of the situation, and now things are fully imploding on the franchise as Kevin Durant has reportedly requested a trade which would end this era of Nets basketball with one total playoff series win in 3 years. That, to put it simply, is nothing short of a disaster, and now having that core looking to leave without seeing the commitment out is an even worse look for the Nets franchise. They invested pretty much their entire future into this core by trading away countless future picks and assets to attain them, and while they should be able to get good value in return for them in any trade, they make that it doesn't make up for all that they've lost. The next team that falls in the losers category is the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks just finished off a great year capped off by a trip to the conference finals, but their offseason hasn't been the greatest. Jalen Brunson was one of the postseason's biggest breakout players, and the hope was that he would re-sign with the Mavericks as he continues to get better and better, but they lost him after he signed with the Knicks for more money than the Mavericks were willing to offer him. What stings the most about this situation is that the Mavericks originally offered Brunson a contract extension last summer for less money that Brunson said he likely would have agreed to, but the team pulled that offer before he could accept it, and now he's gone. The Mavericks did trade for Christian Wood though, which isn't a bad move by any means, but while his partnership with Luka Doncic on offense should be a seamless fit, the defensive end of the floor might take a big hit. Ultimately, the biggest Maverick storyline over the years has been that the team needs to find Luka Doncic a legitimate co-star, and they still have yet to do so. And finally, the last team that falls into the losers column today is the Utah Jazz. The partnership between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert is officially over as the team traded Gobert to the Minnesota Timberwolves a few days ago, and now the writing is on the wall for things to potentially get even worse from here. The Gobert trade landed the Jazz a massive return of future first-round picks and a crop of talent that does give the Jazz solid depth in the short term, so the Jazz aren't necessarily on the losers list of this video because of the return that they got for Gobert, but they're here because this move means that a Donovan Mitchell trade might also be following soon after, especially if the Jazz aren't as competitive in the West as they used to be, and losing both of their franchise players and shifting towards a rebuild would just be an unfortunate turn of events. Rumors have already begun to be spread that Mitchell might request a trade soon after this move, so that is why they're here ultimately. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you think has either won or lost the offseason so far. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.